The cold metal floor felt rough against Dr. Han Tai's knees as he sat in the small prison cell. His hands were locked in strange blue rings that glowed softly in the dim light. The rings felt warm and made his fingers tingle with a buzzing feeling he had never felt before. Every few seconds they pulsed brighter, reminding him that he was trapped. The room around him was not like any hospital he had ever seen. Everything was made of smooth white metal that seemed to glow from inside. Strange machines beeped and hummed along the walls. Tubes filled with green liquid snaked across the ceiling like metal vines. The air smelled sharp and clean, but also wrong somehow. It reminded him of the antiseptic they used in surgery, but mixed with something that made his nose burn. Through the clear wall of his cell, Han Tai could see 3 alien creatures walking back and forth. They were tall and thin, much taller than any human. Their skin was gray and looked like it was made of hard plates that fit together like armor. Each one had 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on their face. 2 eyes were where human eyes should be, and the 3rd eye sat in the middle of their forehead, larger than the other 2. The aliens wore dark blue uniforms that seemed to shift color when they moved. Their hands had 4 long fingers that ended in sharp points like claws. When they walked, their feet made clicking sounds on the metal floor, like the sound of stones hitting together. Han Tai had been awake for what felt like hours, but he had no way to tell time in this place. There were no windows, and the lights never changed. He tried to remember exactly how he had been caught, but his head still felt fuzzy from whatever they had used to knock him out. He had been so careful. For 3 weeks, he had studied this alien, ship from the outside. He had watched their patrol patterns and learned when the guards changed shifts. He had waited for the perfect moment to sneak inside through the cargo bay. His mission was simple, but dangerous. 12 humans from the colony on Kepler Station had been taken by these aliens 2 months ago. Han Tai was going to get them back. Plan had been working perfectly. He had made it through the outer hallways without being seen. He had found the computer room and was downloading information about where the prisoners were being kept. Then something had gone wrong. An alarm had started screaming, and suddenly the hallways were full of these gray aliens with their clicking feet and sharp fingers. He had run, but there was nowhere to go on a ship floating in space. They had cornered him in what looked like a storage room. When he tried to fight them, one of the aliens had pointed a small device at him. A blue light had shot out, and then everything had gone black. Now he was here, in this strange medical room, watching the aliens examine his things. Captain. Veltar was the largest of the 3 aliens. Han Tai had heard the others call him by that name. The captain held Han Tai's medical bag in his 4-fingered hands, turning it over and over like it was some kind of puzzle he could not solve. "Look at this primitive container," Captain Veltar said to the others. His voice was strange, like the sound of wind blowing through metal pipes. "The human carries his tools in animal skin." The captain opened the bag and began pulling out Han Tai's medical tools one by one. First came the scalpels, each one wrapped in clean cloth. The alien held up one of the small silver blades and turned it in the light. "Metal knives," the captain said, and Han Tai could hear laughter in his strange voice. "They cut into flesh with metal knives like savages butchering meat." The other 2 aliens moved closer to look. One of them was shorter and had more scars on his gray skin. The 3rd alien was thin even for their kind and moved with quick, nervous gestures. "Perhaps they do not know about cellular repair beams," said the scarred alien. "Perhaps they are too stupid to understand real medicine. Or maybe they enjoy causing pain," added the thin alien. "Look at these other tools. Needles for piercing. Skin. Thread for sewing flesh like fabric. How wonderfully barbaric." Captain Veltar pulled out more items from the bag. Bandages, bottles of antiseptic, syringes, and packages of medicine. He held up each item and made comments about how primitive and useless it was. The other aliens laughed at everything he said. "This one claims to be a healer," the captain said, pointing at Han Tai with one sharp finger. "Can you imagine? A healer who uses tools that would be more useful in a kitchen." Han Tai watched them mock his equipment, but he did not speak. He was studying them instead. He noticed that the scarred alien favored his left side when he walked, like he had an old injury. That still bothered him. The thin alien kept touching his neck in the same spot over and over, a nervous habit that suggested he was in some kind of pain. Most importantly, he noticed that all three aliens kept looking at the machines around the room with the kind of confidence that came from depending on technology for everything. They trusted their glowing devices and computer screens more than they trusted their own hands. Captain Veltar tossed the medical bag onto a metal table, where it landed with a soft thump. "Store these relics somewhere safe," he told the others. "Perhaps our scientists will want to study them to understand how primitive species attempt medicine." "What should we do with the human?" asked the scarred alien. "Medical Officer Zekmon wants to examine it," the captain replied. "He is curious about their internal structure. After that, we will decide if it is worth keeping alive or if we should add it to the other specimens." The word specimens made Han Tai's blood run cold. He thought about the 12 missing colonists and wondered if they were already dead, cut, open on alien examination tables like animals in a laboratory. The three aliens left the room, their clicking footsteps fading down the hallway. Han Tai was alone again, with the humming machines and the smell of alien antiseptic. He looked down at the glowing restraints on his wrists and began to test their strength. He had work to do. The sound of clicking footsteps returned several hours later. Han Tai had been trying to sleep on the cold metal floor, but rest was impossible. His mind kept thinking about the missing colonists and wondering if they were still alive somewhere on this ship. The clear wall of his cell suddenly became transparent from the other side. Han Tai could see a new alien approaching. This one was different from the three he had seen before. It was much taller and thinner, with longer arms that seemed to bend in too many places. Its gray skin had a greenish tint, and strange markings covered its neck and arms like tattoos made of light. "So, this is the human doctor," the new alien said in a voice that sounded like metal scraping against stone. "I am Medical Officer Zekmon. I have come to examine you, little creature." Two of the aliens from before followed behind Zekmon. Han Tai recognized the scarred one and the thin, nervous one. They both carried strange devices that looked like guns, but with crystals instead of barrels. "Open the containment field," Zekmon ordered. The scarred alien pressed something on his device, and the clear wall of Han Tai's cell disappeared like it had never been there at all. But Han Tai did not try to run. The glowing restraints on his wrists felt heavier now, and he could see more aliens gathering in the hallway outside the medical room. There was nowhere to go. "Stand up, specimen," Zekmon commanded. Han Tai slowly got to his feet. His legs felt stiff from sitting on the hard floor for so long. Zekmon walked around him in a circle, looking at him from every angle like he was examining a piece of broken machinery. "Fascinating," Zekmon said to the other aliens. "Look how crude their construction is. No natural armor plating, no protective eye membranes. Their skin is so soft and weak. How do they survive on their homeworld?" The medical officer pulled out a device that looked like a metal wand, with lights on the end. When he pointed it at Han Tai, the lights began flashing in. Different colors. Han Tai could feel something like warm fingers touching his skin, but nothing was actually there. "Internal scanning complete," Zekmon announced. "Their organs are arranged in the most inefficient way possible. Single hearts that can fail and kill them instantly. Primitive digestive systems, and their brains are so small compared to ours." More aliens began gathering around the medical room. Some wore the same dark blue uniforms as the guards, while others had white robes with symbols that glowed softly. They all wanted to see the human specimen that claimed to be a doctor. "Show them the human's medical tools," suggested the thin alien. The scarred alien brought over Han Tai's medical bag and dumped everything onto the metal examination table. The scalpels, bandages, and bottles scattered across the surface with small, clattering sounds. Zekmon picked up one of the scalpels with 2 of his 4 hands, holding it like it might bite him. "Observe, colleagues. This is how humans practice medicine. They use sharpened metal to cut through skin and tissue." The gathered aliens made sounds that Han Tai guessed were laughter. It sounded like wind blowing through broken glass. "But surely they have cellular regenerators," said one of the white-robed aliens. "Even the most primitive species discover cellular manipulation eventually." "Apparently not," Zekmon replied. "Look at this." He held up a bottle of antiseptic. "They clean wounds by pouring chemicals on them. Chemicals. Like they are washing dirty clothing." More glass-wind laughter filled the room. Zekmon continued his demonstration, picking up each tool and explaining to his audience how barbaric and useless it was. He held up the sutures and explained that humans sewed flesh together with thread, like they were repairing torn fabric. He showed them the syringes and described how humans injected crude drugs directly into their bodies instead of using proper nanomedical delivery systems. "And these bandages," Zekmon said, waving a roll of white cloth in the air. "They cover wounds with fabric and hope they heal naturally. No cellular acceleration, no tissue restructuring. They simply wait and hope for the best." "How do any of them survive?" asked a guard from the crowd. "Barely," Zekmon answered. "Their mortality rates from injury and disease must be enormous. It is amazing their species has not gone extinct." Han Tai listened to all of this without speaking. He watched. The aliens examine his tools like they were ancient artifacts from a dead civilization. Every comment they made showed him something new about how their technology worked and how they thought about medicine. They had machines that could heal wounds instantly. They had tiny robots that could repair damage inside the body. They had devices that could regrow lost limbs and organs. Their medical technology was centuries ahead of anything humans had developed. But Han Tai also noticed something else. When Zekmon had scanned him with the metal wand, the medical officer had stared at the results on his device's screen for a long time. He had not looked at Han Tai himself at all. Everything these aliens knew about medicine came from their machines and computers. "Perhaps we should demonstrate proper medical technique," suggested one of the white-robed aliens. "We could perform a live dissection on the specimen. Show it how real doctors work." "An excellent idea," Zekmon agreed. "It would be educational for everyone." "Wait," Han Tai said quietly. The room became silent. All the alien eyes turned to look at him. Some of the aliens seemed surprised that he could speak at all. "You think your technology makes you better doctors?" Han Tai continued, his voice getting stronger. "But you do not understand the first thing about real medicine." The silence lasted for several seconds. Then the glass-wind laughter started again, louder than before. "Did you hear that?" Zekmon said to his audience. "The primitive creature thinks it can lecture us about medicine. Us, who have mastered cellular regeneration and nanosurgery while its species was still living in caves. What could a human possibly know that we do not?" asked the scarred guard. Han Tai looked around the room at all the alien faces staring at him. Their 3 eyes glowed with amusement and contempt. They thought he was just another inferior species they could study and dispose of. "Let me show you," he said simply. The laughter stopped. The room stayed quiet for a long moment after Han Tai spoke. Medical Officer Zekmon's 3 eyes studied the human with what looked like curiosity mixed with annoyance. The other aliens whispered to each other in their wind-glass voices, wondering what the primitive creature thought it could teach them. "Show us what exactly?" Zekmon asked, his voice carrying a tone of cold amusement. What could a species that cuts flesh with metal blades possibly demonstrate to beings who have mastered the very building blocks of life itself? Han Tai looked around the medical room again. He could see dozens of machines he did not recognize, all humming and glowing with alien technology, but he also noticed something else. In the corner of the room, behind a force field similar to the one that had held him, was another prisoner. This creature was different from the gray aliens. It had green scaled skin and a long snout filled with sharp teeth. Its body was more like a crocodile that could walk on two legs. Dark red blood was pooled beneath it, and Han Tai could see multiple wounds across its chest and arms. The creature's breathing was shallow and rapid. "What is that?" Han Tai asked, pointing toward the wounded prisoner. "A Scalar warrior," Zekmon replied with a dismissive gesture. "We captured it during a battle 3 days ago. It has been useful for testing our new combat weapon effects." "It is dying," Han Tai observed. "Of course it is dying," Zekmon said. "The Scalar have completely different biology from us. Our medical technology is designed for Vorthak physiology. We cannot treat creatures with such primitive cellular structure, so you are just letting it die." "We are studying how it dies," corrected one of the white-robed aliens. "The data will be useful for developing more effective weapons against their species." Han Tai felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "Let me treat it." The glass-wind laughter started again, louder than before. Several aliens had to hold on to each other to keep from falling over with amusement. "The human wants to play doctor," Zekmon announced to his audience. "How entertaining." "Yes. Let us watch the primitive healer work his magic with metal knives and fabric bandages." "This will be educational," agreed the scarred guard. "We can observe exactly how inferior species attempt medical procedures. It will help us understand why so many of them die from simple injuries." Captain Veltar pushed through the crowd of aliens until he reached the front. His large 3 eyes focused on Han Tai with predatory interest. "I like this idea," the captain said. "Let the human demonstrate its methods on the dying Scalar. When it fails, we will have proven once and for all how useless their medicine is. Then we can proceed with the dissection." "And when the human kills the patient with its barbaric methods," added Zekmon, "we will have valuable data about how primitive medical techniques cause more harm than good." Han Tai looked at the wounded Scalar again. Even from across the room, he could tell the creature was in bad shape. Its breathing was getting weaker, and the pool of blood beneath it was growing larger. Without treatment, it would be dead within. "Hours. I will need my medical tools," Han Tai said. "Of course," Zekmon replied with mock politeness. "We would not want you to be unable to perform your primitive surgery due to lack of proper equipment." The medical officer gestured to one of his assistants, who brought Han Tai's medical bag over to the examination table. But instead of giving it to Han Tai, the assistant began laying out each tool one by one, like evidence in a trial. "You may use one tool at a time," Zekmon announced. "We want to observe and record exactly how each primitive instrument contributes to the patient's death. And to make sure you do not try to use them as weapons," added Captain Veltar. "You will remain in restraints during the procedure." Han Tai looked down at the glowing rings around his wrists. They were too tight to slip off, and he had no idea how to disable them. Performing surgery with bound hands would be nearly impossible. "I need at least one hand free," he said. "One hand," Zekmon agreed, "but only one, and only after we move you and the patient to the central examination area, where everyone can see your work clearly." The aliens began pushing buttons on their devices, and the force field around the Scalar prisoner disappeared. 2 guards grabbed the wounded creature and lifted it onto a metal table in the center of the room. The Scalar made a low growling sound that might have been pain or fear. More aliens were arriving now, having heard about the entertainment. The medical room was becoming crowded with gray faces and glowing eyes, all eager to watch the human fail. Han Tai was led to the examination table. The scarred guard touched something on his device, and the restraint on Hantai's right hand flickered and disappeared. His left hand remained locked in the glowing ring. "There," Zekmon announced to the crowd. "The human doctor has one primitive hand and access to its primitive tools. Let us see how long it takes for the patient to die under such expert care." Hantai approached the examination table carefully. The Scalar's yellow eyes followed his movement, but the creature was too weak to resist or fight. Up close, Hantai could see the wounds more clearly. There were 3 deep gashes across the chest and at least 2 smaller cuts on the arms. But more concerning was the way the creature's breathing sounded wet and bubbling. Internal bleeding, Hantai thought. Probably damage to the lungs or other organs. "What are you waiting for?" called out one of the white-robed aliens. "Begin your primitive healing ritual." Hantai picked up a scalpel from his medical kit. The metal felt familiar and comforting in his hand after hours of alien technology. "I will need better light," he said. Zekmon waved a hand, and the room's illumination increased until everything was bright as daylight. "Anything else, Doctor?" Zekmon asked with sarcasm. Hantai looked around the room at all the alien faces, watching him. They expected him to fail. They wanted him to fail. They thought his methods were barbaric and his knowledge worthless. "Just give me room to work," Hantai said, and made his first incision. The scalpel cut through the Scalar's scaled skin with practiced precision. Hantai's hand moved steadily, creating a clean incision that followed the natural lines of the creature's anatomy. Dark green blood welled up from the cut, but it was controlled and deliberate. The aliens around the room had expected to see clumsy butchery. Instead, they watched in growing silence as Hantai worked with the confidence of someone who had done this thousands of times before. "Observe how the human damages healthy tissue," Zekmon announced to his audience, but his voice sounded less certain than before. Hantai ignored the commentary. He was focused entirely on his patient now. With only one free hand, every movement had to be perfect. He used his fingers to feel inside the wound, mapping the damaged organs by touch alone. His face was calm and concentrated. "I need something to stop the bleeding," Hantai said without looking up from his work. "Use your primitive cloth bandages," suggested Captain Veltar. "Not for this," Hantai replied. "I need something that can seal blood vessels quickly." He looked around the alien medical equipment and spotted a device that was glowing with blue light. "What does that machine do?" "It is a tissue sealer," Zekmon answered reluctantly. "It uses focused energy to close damaged blood vessels." "I need to borrow it." Several aliens laughed at this request. "The human wants to use our advanced technology," one of them said, "but it probably does not even know how to operate such sophisticated equipment." Zekmon brought the device over to the examination table. It looked like a pen with a crystal tip that pulsed with soft blue light. "This requires precise calibration for each species," he explained. "One wrong setting, and you will burn through the patient's organs instead of healing them." Hantai took the device and examined it for a moment. There were several dials and buttons along its side, with alien symbols he could not read. But he had worked with energy-based surgical tools before, during his training on the outer colonies. "The Scalar have thicker blood vessels than humans," Hantai said, adjusting one of the dials. "And their scales suggest their skin is more heat-resistant." He tested the device on a small area of damaged tissue. The blue light sealed the blood vessel perfectly without burning the surrounding area. Several aliens made surprised sounds. "Lucky guess," Zekmon muttered. But Hantai was not guessing. He was learning. As he continued operating, he began using more of the alien medical equipment, figuring out how each device worked by observing its effects and adapting his technique accordingly. He used their tissue regenerator to repair damaged muscle. He borrowed their atmospheric mixture device to give the patient pure oxygen. He even figured out how to use their cellular scanner to check for internal damage he could not see. Most importantly, he did something the aliens had never seen before. He talked to his patient. "Stay with me," Hantai said quietly to the unconscious. "Escalar. I know this hurts, but you are going to be okay." He kept one hand on the creature's arm while he worked, monitoring its pulse and temperature through touch. When the patient's breathing became irregular, Hantai paused his surgery to adjust its position and clear fluid from its airway. "Why does the human waste time talking to an unconscious specimen?" asked one of the white-robed aliens. "It is a primitive ritual," Zekmon explained, but he sounded uncertain. "Humans believe their voices can influence biological functions." "But that is scientifically impossible," protested another alien. Hantai continued his work, combining his surgical knowledge with the alien technology in ways they had never considered. When their devices were too large for delicate work, he used his scalpel for precision cuts. When his human tools were insufficient, he adapted their machines to do what he needed. The operation took 3 hours. By the end, the room was completely silent except for the humming of machines and Hantai's steady breathing. The crowd of aliens had grown larger as word spread through the ship, but no one was laughing anymore. Hantai made his final sutures using thread from his medical kit, but he reinforced them with energy from their tissue sealer. The combination created stronger repairs than either method could achieve alone. Finally, he stepped back from the examination table. The Escalar was breathing normally now, its wounds sealed and its vital signs stable. The pool of blood had been cleaned away and monitoring devices showed that all internal bleeding had stopped. "It is finished," Hantai said simply. The room stayed quiet for a long moment. Then one of the monitoring devices began making soft beeping sounds. The Escalar's eyes opened slowly, looking around in confusion. "Impossible," Zekmon whispered. The Escalar tried to sit up, but Hantai gently pressed it back down. "Rest," he told the creature. "You need time to heal." The alien patient looked at Hantai with what might have been gratitude, then closed its eyes and settled into peaceful sleep. Captain Veltar approached the examination table and stared at the results. His 3 eyes moved over the sealed wounds and the steadily breathing patient. "How?" he asked. "You have amazing technology," Hantai replied, "but you have forgotten how to actually practice medicine. Your machines can fix anything, so you never learn to understand your patients. But your methods are so primitive," protested one of the white-robed aliens. "Sometimes primitive methods work better than advanced ones," Hantai said. "Sometimes the old ways have wisdom that new technology cannot replace." He looked around the room, at all the alien faces. They were no longer looking at him with amusement or contempt. Instead, he saw confusion, curiosity, and something that might have been respect. "You saved a life that our technology could not save," Zekmon admitted quietly. "Your technology could save it," Hantai corrected. "You just needed someone who knew how to use it properly. Medicine is not about having the best tools. It is about understanding how to help your patient heal." An alien near the back of the crowd pushed forward. Hantai could see that this one was older, with more scars and patches of darker gray skin. "Human doctor," the old alien said, "I have been in pain for many cycles. Our medical officers say there is nothing wrong with me, but I hurt constantly. Could you look at me?" Before Hantai could answer, another voice called out from the crowd. "And me. I have not slept properly in months. My digestive system has not worked correctly since our last battle," added a third alien. Soon there were dozens of voices, all asking the human doctor for help with problems their own medical officers had dismissed or been unable to solve. Hantai looked at Zekmon and Captain Veltar. Both aliens seemed stunned by the response from their crew members. "It appears," Hantai said quietly, that your advanced medicine might not be as perfect as you thought. Word about the human doctor spread through the ship faster than Hante had expected. Within hours of saving the Sklar prisoner, aliens were lining up outside the medical bay asking for his help. They came quietly at first, embarrassed to be asking a primitive human for medical advice their own doctors could not provide. Captain Veltar had ordered Hantai moved to a larger medical room with better equipment. His restraints had been modified so that both hands were free during medical procedures, though the glowing rings still prevented him from leaving the medical bay. The first patient was the old scarred alien who had spoken up during the operation. His name was Tekfor, and he had been suffering from joint pain for over a year. The ship's medical officers had scanned him repeatedly, but found nothing wrong with his body. Hantai examined Tekfor without using any scanning devices. Instead, he felt along the alien's arms and legs with his hands, asking questions about when the pain was worst and what movements made it better or worse. "Your scans show healthy joints," Hantai explained to Zekmon, who was watching the examination, with obvious skepticism. "But scans cannot detect everything. Sometimes pain comes from muscle tension or nerve damage that is too subtle for machines to find." Hantai showed Tekfor a series of stretching exercises that would help relieve the pressure on his damaged nerves. He also used the alien tissue regenerator in a new way, focusing it on the tiny areas of scar tissue that were causing the problem. Within an hour, Tekfor was moving without pain for the first time in months. The old alien looked at his arms, in amazement, flexing his fingers and rotating his shoulders freely. "How did you find what our scanners could not detect?" Zekmon demanded. "Your scanners look for obvious damage," Hante replied. "But healing is not just about fixing obvious problems. Sometimes you have to feel what the patient is experiencing and think about how different parts of the body affect each other." More patients came forward. A young alien named Colwyn had been having trouble sleeping since a battle injury 6 months earlier. The ship's doctors had healed his wounds perfectly, but they had not considered that the trauma of nearly dying might affect his mind as well as his body. Hante spent time talking with Colwyn about the battle, helping him process the fear and anxiety that was keeping him awake. He also taught the young alien breathing exercises that would help calm his nervous system. Another patient, a female alien called Vexara, had been suffering from digestive problems that the medical scanners could not explain. Hantai discovered that she had been eating the same prepackaged military food for too long, and her body needed more variety in nutrients. Each successful treatment brought more patients and more questions from the ship's medical staff. They could not understand how their primitive captive was solving problems that their advanced technology could not even identify. But Hantai was learning too. Every time he used one of their medical devices, he understood more about how their technology worked. He began to see patterns in their ship's design and layout. Most importantly, he was mapping the location of every room and corridor as patients. Brought him information about different parts of the vessel. "The human prisoners," Hantai asked Tekfor during a follow-up examination. "Where are they being kept?" The old alien looked uncomfortable. "Lower deck 7, he said quietly. "In the specimen holding area." "Are they still alive?" "Most of them," Tekfor replied. "But Medical Officer Zekmon has been running tests. He removes one every few days for detailed study." Hantai's hands paused in their examination. "What kind of tests?" "Dissection," Tekfor said. "He wants to understand human anatomy. He has already studied 4 of your people. 8 left," Hantai thought grimly. 8 out of 12. That night, as Hantai worked late treating patients, Zekmon approached him with a serious expression on his 3-eyed face. "I do not understand what you are doing," the medical officer said. "Your methods should not work. Your tools are primitive and your knowledge is limited. Yet you succeed where our technology fails." "Your technology is not the problem, Hantai," replied while bandaging a patient's wound. The problem is that you have forgotten how to be doctors. What do you mean? Hantai finished with his patient and turned to face Zekmon directly. When did you last touch a patient to check their pulse instead of using a scanner? When did you last ask someone how they felt instead of reading it on a computer screen? When did you last spend time understanding what was causing their pain instead of just trying to fix the symptoms? Zekmon was quiet for a moment. Our technology is more accurate than touch. Our scanners provide more data than simple questions. Data is not the same as understanding, Hantai said. Your machines can tell you what is wrong with a body, but they cannot tell you what is wrong with a person. Before Zekmon could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and Hantai could hear running, footsteps, and shouted orders in the alien language. What is happening? Hantai asked. Zekmon touched a communication device on his uniform. After listening to a rapid burst of alien speech, his face turned a darker shade of gray. Emergency in the command section, he said. Captain Veltar has collapsed. He is not responding to any of our treatments. Take me to him, Hantai said immediately. That is impossible. You are a prisoner. You cannot be allowed in the command areas of the ship. Then he will die, Hantai replied simply. Your medical technology cannot save him, or you would not be telling me about the emergency. But maybe I can. Zekmon stared at him for a long moment. More alarms sounded in the distance, and Hantai could hear panic in the alien voices echoing through the corridors. If I take you to the captain, Zekmon said slowly, and you save his life, what do you want in return? Hantai had been waiting for this moment. I want you to release the human prisoners. That is not possible. They are valuable research specimens. Then your captain dies, Hantai said, and turned back to organizing his medical supplies. Zekmon grabbed Hantai's arm with one of his 4 hands. You would let someone die to save your own people. Hantai looked at the alien's 3 eyes steadily. You have been killing my people for research. I am offering to trade 1 life for 8 lives. That seems fair. The medical officer struggled with the decision for several seconds while the alarms continued to blare around them. Finally, he spoke into his communication device. Prepare the human prisoners for release, he ordered. Full medical treatment for any injuries and transportation to escape pods. He looked back at Hantai. Save the captain's life, and your people go free. Deal, Hantai said, and began gathering his medical equipment. But if any of them die before I can complete the operation, the deal is off. They ran through the corridors toward the command deck, passing panicked aliens and flashing warning lights. Hantai memorized every turn and every door they passed. He was finally going to see the ship's command center. And if he was very careful and very lucky, he might be able to do more than just save Captain Veltar's life. He might be able to save everyone. The command center of the Vorthak ship was larger than Hantai had expected. Curved walls stretched high above, covered with screens showing star charts and ship systems. Dozens of aliens worked at control stations that glowed with soft blue light. But all eyes were focused on the center of the room, where Captain Veltar lay motionless on an emergency medical table. 3 alien medical officers surrounded the captain, their scanning devices beeping frantically. None of them looked up when Hantai and Zekmon arrived. Status report, Zekmon demanded. Complete cardiovascular collapse, replied one of the medical officers without stopping his scan. All major organs are shutting down simultaneously. We have never seen anything like it. Poison, suggested another officer. But our detectors cannot identify the toxin. Hantai approached the captain's still form. Veltar's gray skin had turned almost white, and his 3 eyes were closed. His breathing was so shallow it was barely visible. How long has he been like this? Hantai asked. 2 hours, Zekmon replied. He was giving orders on the bridge. when he suddenly collapsed. "We have tried every treatment protocol in our medical database." Han Tai began examining the captain without using any scanning equipment. He felt for pulse points along Veltar's neck and arms, checked his breathing pattern, and looked closely at his skin and eyes. "This is not poison," Han Tai said after several minutes. "Then what is it?" demanded one of the alien doctors. "Stress," Han Tai replied simply. The aliens stared at him in confusion. "Stress cannot cause complete organ failure," Zekmon protested. "It can if it builds up over years without treatment," Han Tai explained. "Your captain has been commanding this ship through battles and dangerous missions for how long?" 15 cycles, Zekmon answered. "He is one of our most experienced officers." 15 years of constant pressure and responsibility, Han Tai said. Always having to make life and death decisions. Always having to be strong for his crew. "When did he last take a break? When did he last sleep for more than a few hours?" The aliens looked at each other uncomfortably. None of them could remember the captain ever taking leave or resting. "His body finally reached its limit," Han Tai continued. "All the stress and exhaustion caught up with him at once. His nervous system is shutting down to protect itself." "But how do we treat nervous system failure?" asked one of the medical officers. "Our scanners show no physical damage to repair." Han Tai was already preparing his equipment. But this time he also began setting up several alien medical devices in ways their designers had never intended. "I need a neural stimulator," he said, "and a cellular regenerator set to the lowest possible power. Also, I want everyone except Zekmon to leave this room." "That is not acceptable," protested the senior medical officer. "We must observe the procedure to ensure you do not harm the captain." "Too many people will add stress to the environment," Han Tai replied firmly. "If you want him to live, give me space to work." Zekmon gestured for the other medical officers to leave. Reluctantly, they gathered their equipment and moved to observation stations around the edges of the room. Han Tai began working on Captain Veltar with a combination of human medical knowledge and alien technology. He used the neural stimulator to gently restart the captain's nervous system like jump-starting a dead battery, but he did it slowly and carefully, monitoring every response. At the same time, he used his own hands to massage pressure points along the captain's arms and legs, encouraging blood flow and helping the alien's body remember how to function normally. "What are you doing?" Zekmon asked, watching Han Tai work with his hands while managing multiple machines. "Your technology can fix damaged organs," Han Tai explained while adjusting the cellular regenerator. "But it cannot fix a damaged spirit. Sometimes healing requires more than just machines." As Han Tai worked, he also talked to the unconscious captain. He spoke in a calm, steady voice about recovery and rest, about the importance of taking care of yourself so you can take care of others. Slowly, Captain Veltar's color began to improve. His breathing became deeper and more regular. The monitoring devices showed his vital signs stabilizing. But Han Tai was doing more than just saving the captain's life. While his hands worked on the patient, his eyes were studying the command center around him. He memorized the locations of control panels and communication stations. He noticed which systems required security codes and which ones were left open. Most importantly, he saw exactly where the ship's weapons and engines were controlled from. After 4 hours of careful treatment, Captain Veltar's eyes slowly opened. He looked around in confusion, then focused on Han Tai's face. "The human," he whispered in his windpipe voice. "Rest," Han Tai told him. "You have been very sick, but you will recover if you take time to heal properly." Captain Veltar tried to sit up, but Han Tai gently pressed him back down. "My ship," the captain said weakly. "Your ship is fine," Zekmon assured him. "The human saved your life, Captain. His primitive methods succeeded where our technology failed." The captain's 3 eyes studied Han Tai with new respect. "You could have let me die," he said. "Why did you save me?" "Because that is what doctors do," Han Tai replied simply. "We heal people, even our enemies. The human prisoners, Captain Veltar said, remembering his medical officer's promise. You agreed to release them. Yes, Captain, Zekmon confirmed. They are being prepared for transport now. But Hantai had one more surprise planned. While treating Captain Veltar, he had been secretly placing tiny devices from his medical kit at various locations around the command center. The devices looked like harmless medical sensors, but they were actually emergency transmitters he had modified using alien technology. When activated, the transmitters would send out a distress signal that could be picked up by human ships. More importantly, they would disable the Vorthak ship's weapons and engines by overloading their power systems. Captain, Hantai said as he finished packing his equipment, I need to ask you something. What is it, human doctor? How many other ships like this are capturing humans for experimentation? Captain Veltar was quiet for a moment. Several, he admitted. It is part of our research into conquering your species. Hantai nodded sadly. I thought so. He reached into his medical bag and pulled out a small device that looked like a scalpel handle. But instead of a blade, it had a crystal tip that glowed softly. What is that? Zekmon asked. Something I built while treating your crew members, Hantai replied. I learned a lot about your technology over the past few days. He pressed a button on the device, and all around the command center, his hidden transmitters began to activate. Alarms started blaring as the ship's weapons powered down and the engines began to shut off. You sabotaged our ship, Captain Veltar said, but there was no anger in his voice. Instead, he sounded almost impressed. I disabled your ability to hurt people, Hantai corrected. Your ship will be fine, but you will not be able to attack any more human colonies until you repair the damage. How? Zekmon demanded. How did you plant devices without us seeing? Hantai held up the modified scalpel. Every time I used your medical equipment, I learned something new about how your technology works. Every time I treated one of your crew members, I placed a small transmitter that looked like a medical sensor. He looked around the room at the aliens staring at him with amazement and confusion. You laughed at my primitive tools, Hantai continued. You thought metal scalpels and cloth bandages were signs of an inferior species, but you forgot the most important lesson of medicine. Which is? Captain Veltar asked. A doctor's hands can both heal and harm, Hantai said quietly. We choose to heal because that makes us human, but never mistake healing for weakness. The ship shuddered as the engines finally shut down completely. In the distance, Hantai could see the lights of human rescue ships approaching, drawn by the distress signals his transmitters were broadcasting. Your people will be rescued, Hantai told Captain Veltar, and mine will be free. That seems like a fair trade. Captain Veltar struggled to sit up on the medical table, his three eyes fixed on the human doctor who had saved his life and defeated his ship with nothing but medical knowledge and determination. We underestimated your species, the captain said finally. Yes, Hantai replied, watching the rescue ships grow larger in the view screen. You did. As the human ships docked with the disabled Vorthak vessel, Hantai gathered his simple medical tools and prepared to leave. The aliens who had mocked his primitive scalpels and barbaric methods watched in silence as he walked toward the exit. Behind him, Captain Veltar called out one final question. Human doctor, what is your name? Hantai paused at the doorway and looked back at the command center full of advanced alien technology that he had defeated with basic medical knowledge and human ingenuity. Dr. Hantai, he said, Korean Medical Corps. And the next time you see a human with a scalpel, remember that we know how to use it. Then he was gone, leaving the aliens to contemplate what they had learned about the species they had thought was primitive and weak. The scalpel had indeed turned the tables.